Well, hello and welcome to a chat with Gareth Edwards here today on this lovely sofa, which looks like we're in someone's home.
And you have a YouTube cushion.
I have a little cushion there, yeah. We'll pop that in the middle. Brilliant.
A little barrier.
Director of Rogue One, of course, if you didn't know, which you do because you're watching this. I would like to just have a chat with you about the film, to be honest.
For it.
It's not like a list of questions.
No, do it.
What struck me most about it, what I was most excited for, I think, was the diversity.
Okay.
And I think, in particular, seeing what Disney and what Star Wars are doing with female role models. I think beginning, of course, with Leia, who I grew up with and who kind of got me into sci-fi and was the first woman I saw being a strong, well-written female character in sci-fi.
Yeah.
And now with Rey and with Jyn Erso, I just think it's really interesting, and I'd love to hear sort of your take on that. Really.
I mean, it is a reoccurring ingredient in Star Wars, even with Natalie Portman, say, in the prequels and things.
Of course, yeah.
And so, it was already written that way in terms of having a female protagonist when I got on board. John Knoll, who wrote the original kind of 2 or 3 page document that set up the whole movie, he's got 2 daughters, I believe, if I get that right. And so he wanted to create a really good role model for them. And so he went with a female protagonist. And being as it was going to sort of touch and mirror in some form A New Hope, it just felt like, yeah, absolutely, that's the way to go. And I think I'm very proud of the fact we did that. But one of the things we did try and do at best, obviously I'm a guy, is
exclusive.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean that to come out. That I've got to tell my parents tonight before you put this online, so they know. But one of my favourite role models outside of Star Wars is Ripley in
almost said it at the same time.
Alien and Aliens.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that's so strong is because the writers who were writing that wrote it for a guy, so they just wrote it as themselves. And then at the last minute, Ridley cast Sigourney Weaver, a female, and so it didn't feel like it was pandering too much to any stereotypes. And so we tried to write Jyn at the beginning like it was us, like it was another guy,
A human.
yeah, a person who happens to be female.
Yeah.
Was the way we would describe it.
Which is great, and it's weird and almost sad that still needs to be happening these days, but also great that you did that with that in mind, because I think sometimes when men write women, they're trying to write a woman.
Right.
And so they sort of miss the mark slightly, but when you just write a person and cast a woman in the role,
I think it's anything that you're not. So it's like, I'm not a parent, but if I wrote a film about a parent,
exactly,
I'd probably be trying to imagine what it was like to be a parent, and you'd get things wrong. And so I think people are a lot more alike than we give them credit. And so it's just try and write things that are like you. And if you like that person, if you like that character, then there's a very good chance the rest of the world might like them.
And how much of Jyn was you guys, and how much of it was Felicity? Like when she came to set, how much did you sort of work through the character?
She played Jyn in every single scene. We never played her ever. We looked very similar, but it was always 100% Felicity.
I wasn't sure if sometimes it was you
in
in
the
the wig,
question?
or well, no, I'm wondering how much you adapted, sort of.
There's some over the shoulder shots. No, it was very much Felicity, and that's the thing is we cast her whilst we were still writing. We knew it was going to be Felicity, and so then you can, knowing that, it helps you. You can even you can finesse the role even more. And we wanted someone like, I was a little bit bored of, hey, we got this kick-ass, badass female heroine, right? I like the idea of someone where you see their vulnerability, you see that they might not make it. Like in little private moments when camera's just with her, I wanted to see her struggle. And the great thing about Felicity, she's got all that soul, but also you can believe that her life was supposed to be on a different path, that she was born to be someone different, and then these events happen in the beginning of our film that force her to grow up in a war, really. And
you touched on something there that was really interesting as well, like her vulnerability. I think a lot of the time when we talk about a strong female character, what we want is not a badass, it's someone who is vulnerable and is weak and is afraid, but still is brave in the face of that. And I felt that with a lot of the characters, that they had their flaws and they had their weaknesses.
All you ever see is strength. You don't actually seem human, you seem kind of just you're built that way, so it doesn't, I don't think people don't really relate to that. But when you see the weakness and you see that they can make mistakes and they're not perfect and they're struggling, I think everyone empathizes with that, and everyone's like, well, that's kind of me. Yeah. And they win you over in those moments. And so it was, even if, wherever we had the chance, we'd always try and capture these little internal, little processing moments of where the audience could project their own thoughts onto Jyn or Cassian or whatever, and it's weird. It's like you don't know what they're thinking, but in those tiny moments, they all add up during a film, and I think you empathise. You just think that they're going through whatever you're processing.
Yeah. And Cassian's a really good example of that as well, because he's quite an imperfect hero. I mean, he begins by doing something quite horrible, but you know he doesn't want to do it, and it's all for the greater good, and that kind of tortures him throughout the film. Could you talk a little bit about sort of that decision to make him not an anti-hero, but certainly not the good guy, not Han Solo, who's, you know, a little bit of a scoundrel, but actually a good guy through and through? Where along the way did the decision come to have something so dark happen early on?
Well, as we tried all these different options, like whatever we did with Cassian, we wanted him always, like in every version, he was always going to have done something that was technically portraying his own people to some extent, and it evolved as we went. There was lots of different ways of doing that, and that's kind of why I gravitated towards Diego, because you needed to be able to forgive him, and so we needed to find an actor where no matter what they did, you still like them. And
he's just sort of inherently likable, isn't it? Like I met
Yeah.
Diego, and even just as a guy, it's like, oh, you're just lovely. I couldn't possibly be angry with you.
I had a bit of a man crush on Diego, and you kind of want him to be your best mate, and you're like, okay, we're gonna, after when this film's over, we're gonna be best friends, and we're gonna live in the same house.
And now he doesn't call, he doesn't write.
He hasn't called me since the premiere. What's going on?
Shocking. The final question on that, with him and his character, obviously, again, this is the kind of thing that it shouldn't be an issue, and yet it is. And I think you guys have done so much in terms of choosing a very progressive cast, I suppose I'll put it that way. Diego himself is Mexican, and there was just so much diversity in it. At what point did that come? Was that during the script writing, like, this is what we want to get out of it, or was that just these were the right cast members for it at the time when it came down to it?
There's loads of different reasons. A real simple one is, you know in your cast you've got like an annoying robot and a talking fish, and so somewhere in the human bit you probably should represent most of humanity for it to feel real. And the fact that we knew that the rebellion was going to get fractured and destroyed slightly, and only one little branch was going to survive to go and do A New Hope, so the other pieces of the pie kind of had to be represented visually, and so that meant we went around the whole world and got the best actors we could get, which being Star Wars is usually everyone.
Everyone you have available to you.
People will amazingly clear their schedule and drop what they're doing to be in a Star Wars film, I found.
I have no idea why. For what it's worth, I agree with your decision about the opening crawl. I'm sure you got a lot of backlash over that, but
thank you.
I did have a moment of the music swelled and I went, and then it didn't happen. I was like, now I'm completely on tenterhooks the whole time. And
well, I guess what you want to do is there's expectations, isn't there? And as soon as you can go against one of those, then people are like, oh, I'm not sure what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and then when the score is different or anything else is different, you're sort of going along for the ride.
And also, like, that Lucasfilm are going to be doing other these kind of standalone movies, Star Wars stories. So it was a way of differentiating it from the saga. I'm
being told to wrap up over here, so I will. But thank you so much. That was a really interesting chat.
Oh no, thank you. Thanks.
And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Rogue One is out on Blu-ray, I wanted to say, on April 10th.
April 10th. Go buy it. Or you can download it if you don't want to walk to the shops. Or if you
walk to the shop.
in the house.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks.